Louise Kane gave birth to her son Joshua in 2017. She says staff negligence led to a delay in her son being resuscitated following a complicated birth. Well, she now wants an apology, and our reporter Grace Adenergy spoke to Louise.
Labour started as normal labour, progressed very slowly and ended up needing to push for quite a long time, so 4 hours in total, which I now know was too long. And in that time, my baby's heart rate did drop, and there was a mix-up with my own heart rate. The consultant was going to decide what was going to happen. The midwife didn't really have much of a say. Therefore, he pushed me down the list for intervention. A lot of time later, they decided just to check me over again, and that's when the heart rate they found that my son's heart rate had plummeted, and they decided to go straight in for a C-section. They quickly realised that the theatre was not prepped in time, dirty towels, dirty oxygen probe. The member of staff that should have been doing that refused to do her job because she said she was too poorly to do her job that day. The lack of support had caused a delay in my son being resuscitated, and by the time he was resuscitated, he'd already, we believe, had suffered a stroke at that point.
At that point when everything was, I guess, just manic around you, how did you feel? What was going through your mind?
I just was out of it. I just completely spaced out. All the drugs pumping, I was feeling sick. But I was so aware that everything was going wrong. The alarms were going, everybody arguing at each other. The midwife, she ran out in tears once my baby had been resuscitated, and she never returned because she had not been supported. She had been let down massively, and my husband is still traumatised, will never forget that. He'll never forget the day that he lost me and my son, and nobody, not a single person, reassured him it was going to be okay. And even to this day, they still haven't acknowledged and owned up to the fact that they just did not do their job.
It must have been really traumatic for you and your family. And so after you came home, did you notice anything?
Well, when we were actually in the hospital and my son was in the NICU, he kept having right leg jerks. His legs were just shaking. And both me and my husband sort of said to the nurses, surely that can't be right. And they agreed that they'd keep an eye on it. And told the doctor, and the doctor said, oh, don't worry. After the next few months, he continued to have these jerking moments. He couldn't use really much of his right side very well. He had no strength whatsoever in his right leg. We just was that this cannot be normal. In the process of the complaint being made about his birth, I had sort of not demanded, but sort of said I would like him to be seen again, because you discharged him easily enough thinking that he's okay, when actually we said we weren't sure. And then he was invited to have an outpatient appointment every 3 months with the paediatric team at Luton and Dunstable Hospital. One test that they should have done was the MRI of the brain, and they talked us out of it and said, it'd be traumatic for your son, we'd have to sedate him. And being naive, first-time parents, we just agreed. And then at another meeting, when I was invited in, and I just said, I cannot trust your care anymore. And they offered to transfer his care to Milton Keynes Hospital, and Milton Keynes Hospital saw him straight away and agreed he needed an MRI done there and then. They couldn't believe it hadn't been done sooner.
What was the result of the MRI?
So it's a condition called peritrabecular leukomalacia. It's white matter on his brain where the suspected stroke had caused, from the oxygen deprivation, damage to the brain. In basic terms, they can just label him as having learning difficulties.
So when you finally had the MRI and got the diagnosis,
yeah,
what did you think? Because you've been fighting for ages.
I was relieved, myself personally, because I just knew all along there was something not right. But for my husband, he was just angry. He was so angry that we'd been talked out of that there was anything wrong, and it just was that one person didn't do their job that day. If she'd just done her job that day, or she'd just said, I'm too poorly to work, been a responsible adult and said, I can't work today, you need to replace me, my son would not have that. My son would not be in the position that he was in now.
you've now got a daughter as well.
Yes.
How does your son's learning disability, I guess, affect family life?
So, considering he has made amazing progress, like to the point where he's had a second MRI and the results have come back amazingly well. All that intervention, everything we've put in place has actually made a difference and has helped his brain rewire. It hasn't been easy, but I think having a daughter, we had to do it for two reasons. One, because we needed to know that having a baby can be safe and can be a time where people can enjoy that experience, but also for my son, for him to learn, how to share, to empathise, to be a big brother, take responsibility, show independence. So actually it's helped him loads. But it is difficult when we see her. She's just miles ahead. She's doing everything. She's practically nearly walking. She's practically talking. She's doing everything that my son couldn't. So that's hard, but it's good to know that not every time has to end the way it did with my son.
Well, that was Louise Kane there, talking about her experiences giving birth to her son at the L&D hospital. She also has this advice for mothers who may have had a similar experience.
To other mothers, I just say, make sure you know exactly